back!
SpongeBob? Huh?
Oh, this is gonna be great.
A monster! What have you done with SpongeBob, you ghostly imposter, you?
There's not a day in my life that goes by where I don't reference SpongeBob in some capacity. So to say I was excited that THQ Nordic and Purple Lamp would be creating yet another brand new SpongeBob adventure would be an understatement. While I can't say I've kept up with the newer seasons of the show as I've gotten older, so many jokes and lines from those earlier episodes have been a part of quite literally my entire life. I've long considered the original Battle for Bikini Bottom to be one of the first video games I've ever played, so maybe it's just the nostalgia talking, but the SpongeBob platformers are some of gaming's finest and still hold up to this day. And because of that, there was absolutely no hesitation in my desire to check this one out. SpongeBob SquarePants Titans of the Tide begins on an extra special day at the Krusty Krab. Customers are lined up and excitedly waiting for the store to open so they can grab a deal on their beloved Krabby Patties. The Flying Dutchman arrives, sees the line, and demands special treatment. Not being taken seriously, the Dutchman's told to wait in line like everyone else.
The Flying Dutchman waiting in a line of simple mortals? Unimaginable! Unthinkable!
Several thinkable hours later.
After waiting for a while, and it's finally his turn, Mr. Krabs escorts King Neptune to the front of the line immediately and offers him a meal, courtesy of Squidward's wallet. This sends the Dutchman into a fit of rage and thus begins a conflict between King Neptune and the Flying Dutchman, the Titans of the Tide. In the midst of the chaos and destruction, many fish and SpongeBob are caught in the crossfire and they're transformed into ghosts. Now, SpongeBob and Patrick will have to find both King Neptune and the Flying Dutchman to stop their fighting and remove the curse from Bikini Bottom. It's pretty typical and it's what you'd expect from the usual SpongeBob video game formula, and it was actually a really nice surprise to see some references here to both Battle for Bikini Bottom and the Cosmic Shake. Both of those games are pretty special to me, and to see them actually acknowledge each other instead of just being one-off adventures is a detail that I really enjoyed. And I mentioned a little earlier how I'm not caught up on the newer seasons of the show, and that really wasn't an issue here at all. There are so many references in the writing and the characters you meet that I immediately understood, which shows that the game is catered toward fans both new and old. All of the original voice actors for the show reprised their roles for each character, and it really helps this feel like it's just another episode of the show.
Chocolate! Chocolate!
That's some sweet tooth he's got.
Like the two games that came before it, Titans of the Tide is a 3D puzzle platformer. It's a bit less of a collectathon than the previous games, but there are still plenty of collectibles to find. Throughout the adventure, your playable protagonists are SpongeBob and Patrick. Patrick's return was a welcome one as he was playable in Battle for Bikini Bottom, but wasn't actually playable in the Cosmic Shake. And just like those other SpongeBob games, in addition to normal 3D platforming, there are also some slide segments throughout the game. These helped break up the levels into separate segments that actually helped me better remember certain aspects of each world. The game did feel a bit on the shorter side compared to previous SpongeBob games, consisting of just 5 main levels that take you through areas inspired by locations in the show. I finished the main story for the first time with a good amount of collectibles in around 5 hours, with my playtime drastically increasing when it came to achieving 100%. SpongeBob and Patrick control pretty similarly, so you're free to spend more time as whoever you prefer, but they each have their own strengths and differences. Both characters are able to attack, dodge roll, double jump, and glide for a bit. SpongeBob has the unique ability of an air kick, which sort of acts like Sonic's homing attack, and he can launch himself toward enemies, kicking symbols, and balloons. A little while into the story, but still very early on, he also unlocks the ability to blow bubbles with a bubble wand. This allows SpongeBob to trap enemies in bubbles and even activate switches, and provides more of a ranged option for the sponge. Patrick, on the other hand, is able to grapple onto targets and even burrow into the ground. He can grapple just about anything from an impressive range, including enemies, and it almost felt like the easy solution to many of these challenging gauntlets you face. Even though it doesn't really matter, I did find Patrick to be a little more useful at times, especially during combat, mainly because throwing projectiles at enemies felt a bit more practical than just lunging at them with SpongeBob. There are many moments here where the game will also reward you for using each of their moves strategically, especially in cases where you jump towards hard to reach places, and it really reminded me of certain moments in Mario games like Super Mario Odyssey where it would give you coins for being somewhere you wouldn't normally be through normal gameplay. The controls are tight and responsive enough so I knew exactly how to gauge my jumps and be accurate with my platforming abilities every single time. Now here's where the main gimmick of Titans of the Tide comes in. Whereas in Battle for Bikini Bottom you swapped characters at a bus stop, switching characters has become much more streamlined. At the literal push of a button, SpongeBob and Patrick will swap ghost forms and you instantly take control of the other character. It's actually pretty incredible how quickly and seamlessly you can change your style of gameplay, and it meant no more excessive backtracking for a collectible that's just barely out of reach. I was actually impressed with how quickly the swapping characters mechanic became muscle memory for me. Sometimes I'd even just be hitting the swap button because it was fun to do and it doesn't actually disrupt how I play. There's no stopping the flow of gameplay at all, and it results in some creative puzzles that take full advantage of both characters' unique abilities throughout the entire entire game. There's a lot riding on this game's main mechanic, and it absolutely nails it. It is the perfect evolution of gameplay in these SpongeBob games, and it's the best way to make it stand apart from the rest for all the right reasons. When I first previewed the game with a demo a few months ago, one of my main hopes for the full game was that there would be tricky and complicated platforming puzzles that required me to quickly switch back and forth between SpongeBob and Patrick on the fly. But because I figured this game was targeting an audience much younger than myself, I kept its expectation low. To my surprise, there were actually so many of these moments, and even a few challenges completely dedicated to this. In a style very much inspired by the platforming found in Super Mario Sunshine's bonus stages, there are these floating platforms that'll twist and rotate, and you have to make it to the goal as quickly as possible. Or sometimes you'll be sliding down a ramp, come across a hole where you need to burrow and launch as Patrick, glide for a bit, and then swap mid-glide to SpongeBob to be able to target a floating balloon and keep moving forward. These moments had me smiling that I actually pulled it off, and I really wasn't expecting this type of fast platforming response from anything in the game, and anytime these challenges came up, they ended up being some of the most fun I had in the entire game. The main hub world this time around is the Floating Patty, a converted mobile restaurant that flies through the sky as you look for the Flying Dutchman and King Neptune. It's a really fun concept, but at times it felt less fleshed out than exploring a full map of iconic locations in Bikini Bottom or Conch Street like in the other two games, because those at least felt like they were their own levels too. The Floating Patty does have a bit to offer, like a few collectibles to find, a patty flipping minigame, and the shop where you can buy costumes for both SpongeBob and Patrick, as well as collectibles to be displayed on the patty. You can access the shop at pretty much any time from the pause menu though, so it kinda makes this shop a little irrelevant beyond the first purchase, unless you want to speak with Pearl for some flavor text. At the top of the patty, you can access Plankton's portals, which offer some extra challenges for those who seek it. SpongeBob SquarePants Titans of the Tide takes place across 5 different worlds, and they each have a set of main quests and side quests to complete. They're all based on actual locations featured in the show, like Jellyfish Fields or King Neptune's Palace. I made sure to do every side quest since they're the best way to have secondary characters like Mrs. Puff and Squilliam get involved in a little bit of the story. While you can usually teleport to 1, 2, or sometimes even 3 checkpoints in a world, I do miss the freedom of being able to freely teleport to an even more precise location by selecting that spatula like in Battle for Bikini Bottom. Because you're so limited, it made revisiting stages for collectibles feel like such a drag at times, because I'd know exactly where I want to go, but still have to solve the puzzle every time and defeat the same enemies again every time I loaded the area. And where there are levels, there are bosses. Just about every world culminates in an epic boss fight. They're your typical fights where you dodge attacks until the boss reveals its weak spot, then you hit it, and you repeat until the boss is finished. One of my favorites in the whole game is a fight against Hibernation Sandy, because I think the Dirty Dan and Pinhead Larry scene is something pretty much any fan can recognize and appreciate, and it was implemented so wonderfully here in terms of the lines spoken by the characters and the visuals.
Which one of you fellers is Dirty Dan?
You be Dirty Dan this time, SpongeBob.
The boss fights are yet another example of how the game takes advantage of both SpongeBob and Patrick's unique abilities. They're challenging fights, but never too difficult. You can't just power through these levels with one character, which really emphasizes the fact that SpongeBob and Patrick so proudly wear their BFF rings. There are quite a number of collectibles to find in each level. The game itself is not exactly as much of a collectathon as previous entries were, and none of the collectibles are necessarily required, but I did get the most out of my experience by going for every single one of them, even if it did cause a bit of a headache, but more on that in a second. The most common collectible are the coins, which can be found by opening up chests, digging underground, destroying tikis and enemies, or just laying around the level. You can use these to buy more alternate costumes for SpongeBob and Patrick as you unlock them, and also to buy collectibles that are displayed on the bottom half of the floating patty. You can even buy extra underpants pieces as you unlock those, 4 of which add an extra health meter to both characters, and if you really feel inclined to do so, there's also filters for the game's photo mode. Oh yeah, there's a photo mode in this game. While it's becoming more and more prominent in games these days, I can't pretend it's a feature I stop to take advantage of willingly. Most times I open this, it's a complete accident. That being said, it's pretty robust, so you can probably make some creative shots throughout the game. The other main collectibles you find in this game are treasure chests. There's around 130 of them total across the 5 worlds, with the amount of each world varying. They're simple enough, usually rewarding you with coins, but they can also trigger unlocks for various items in the shop. You wouldn't think it, but these were actually some of the most frustrating collectibles to track down, because while you know how many of them are in a world, you have no idea where they are, or which ones you have, or even how to unlock them if they're hidden. One of the last sort of collectibles or unlockables are David Hasselhoff's secret wisdoms in the form of TVs scattered across each world. The TVs are especially hidden compared to other collectibles in the game, but they're pretty entertaining for what they're worth, so I did my best to seek them all out. You should definitely look for all of these because the final reward is absolutely worth it. These actually got a chuckle out of me, and we've certainly come a long way from "I'm not a lifeguard but I play one on TV" in the original SpongeBob movie game. There are 2 TVs to be found in each world, and like the treasure chests, the game doesn't even track which ones you have. It only tracks how many you have. Going for 100% in this game actually felt like a total nuisance because the game does a really bad job at keeping track of what you found. More specifically, it does a bad job of telling you exactly what you've found. Because of how many and how hidden the collectibles are, it's not exactly helpful to know that I found 22 of 35 chests in an area, but give no further information about where the chests I'm missing might be. In previous games like Battle for Bikini Bottom, if I was missing a golden spatula, I could look at the ones I have and narrow down the missing ones to be between the locations of the two that I already had. There isn't any sort of indicator of this. This is worsened by the fact that these stages are pretty large and can take literal hours in each world to search up and down. Trust me, I've done it. This also made it difficult to unlock a number of items from the shop because you don't know what the unlock criteria for it is. It could be anything. Sometimes an underpants piece or a costume would be locked and I'd just have to hope and pray that the next chest I found in a level would have that missing element. But the worst offender about the game not tracking your collectibles happened to me at a point in the game where I had completed every side quest and every main quest except for one. At this point I also didn't have every TV collected, but I didn't know that. But then in one of the worlds I was still missing a side quest. I went up and down for hours in this world trying to figure out which side quest I was missing. It turned out that the missing side quest was directly connected to collecting all of the TVs, and I had been missing one in one of the much later worlds. 100%ing the game probably won't be difficult now that the game is out and people will be able to make guides for it, but just know that during the pre-release period, I wasn't the only one to have these issues. Titans of the Tide is a great looking game visually. I think all the characters have been wonderfully translated into 3D models, because it can be pretty easy to screw up the world of SpongeBob when you transform it from the classic 2D look of the show. Seeing these various Bikini Bottom locales be ghostified makes for a pretty unique setting and helps the game establish its own visual identity when you compare the trilogy. The animations during character interactions also give a splash of life to everyone, and the game oozes that iconic SpongeBob charm. It's also a nice touch how the loading screens appear as those iconic time cards from the show, even if it might start to feel a bit repetitive. It's a mostly smooth experience on PS5, but there were also a few instances where I noticed significant frame drops that nearly caused me to mess up some precise platforming. It only became noticeable during some late game Rift Apart style shenanigans and not during the entire game, but it was noticeable enough to the point where I grew a little concerned. The music here is created specifically for the game, but still contains that iconic sound like the music found in the show. A lot of the levels have an upbeat tune, but also a creepy vibe to it. It matches the overall ghostly theme of the game, which I really appreciate. And I want to give a special shout out to Jellyfish Fields, which has a wintry remix of the iconic theme found in the original Battle for Bikini Bottom. I actually gasped when I heard the main melody kick in. And just because I want to mention it, I really enjoyed how on the PS5 DualSense controller, the colored lights change to either yellow or pink depending on who you're playing as. It's an extra detail that really wasn't necessary, but I'm so glad it's there. SpongeBob SquarePants Titans of the Tide is an excellent 3D platformer adventure that you can tell was crafted by fans for the fans. It recaptures that sense of wonder I felt back in the day when I played the original SpongeBob platformer, and it makes for a delightful time exploring these new areas of Bikini Bottom. While completionists might find it a bit frustrating without a bit of assistance, I think Purple Lamp hit it out of the park once again with yet another original SpongeBob title. If you're like me and you're a fan of any of these games, Titans of the Tide is more of what we come to know and love. Titans of the Tide is the game for you and me.